Hey, so very cool thing going on in Hamburg Township. There's an organization there called Residents Working Against the Huron River Flooding. Of course, flooding has been a big problem down there for decades, literally. Amber Bismack is someone who's been very involved with that organization. And recently, Hamburg Township and Green Oak Township submitted a proposal for a flood study, and they were approved for that, and that work got underway. So we're going to give Amber a call right now and find out more about this. Very cool.
I've never studied floods, have you?
Flood pans.
Hello?
Hi, Amber. It's Mike and John from Mike and John Got It Going On. How you doing today?
Good, how are you?
All right. We were just talking about your proposal and the study.
Yeah, so tell us about this. It's a $150,000 grant or funding that was provided by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for this flood inundation study. How did this study come about, and what exactly do you hope it will accomplish?
Great questions. So this study is an extension of a previous flood inundation study that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the USGS conducted back between around 2015 to 2019. So that study, what they did is they were looking at non-structural mitigation efforts, and particularly around elevation and water flow on Ore Lake and downstream on the Huron River.
So when you say non-structural mitigation efforts, what does that mean precisely?
So that's looking at least from my understanding. Now, I certainly am no expert.
Well, Amber, if you don't understand it, we have no hope.
No way.
So,
I mean, are we talking just making hills to, kind of enclosing things?
So what they were talking about then, it was not as much about that. It was more about, like, what does it mean for homeowners?
Right.
So that study was really emphasizing different ways that homeowners, like methods and techniques that they can take to actually protect their home against flooding. So the primary suggestion that came out of that, the primary two suggestions were to elevate your home above the floodplain or above the 100-year flood level.
right.
And the other suggestion, actually what's called a acquisition and demolition. So it's a buyout, basically. So that would be a collaboration between the township and the homeowner with funding from FEMA and the township, where they would actually buy a property, demolish all of the structures, and then the property would be required to stay in as a green space forever. So those were the primary suggestions. So they're more like home-based suggestions, and in that study, and that came out, the final report of that came out in 2019, December of 2019.
Right.
Do you know how many residents we're talking about when it comes to something like that?
How many residents?
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about a buyout and knocking down their former home.
So all of those types of things depend on who wants to participate. So that study evaluated 225 homes all around Ore Lake.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean every single one of those homes needs that kind of mitigation effort, or that every single one of those homeowners wants to pursue that. Those are just the recommendations, because any of these studies are just recommendations.
And it sounds like that previous study that you're talking about, that's more about how to deal with the effects of flooding. Now, this study that is just been approved and just got underway, is this more looking at how to prevent the flooding?
Yes. So that one was more kind of, in my opinion, more of like a reaction, kind of reactive kind of response to flooding. Certainly measures you want to take before there's flooding, but still more reactive. Yes, this one is actually more of a proactive method, and it's in a different location. So that one was Ore Lake and downstream on the Huron River. This one is upstream of Ore Lake. So Ore Lake actually has two tributaries that flow into it, the South Ore Creek and Dobrova Creek. Dobrova Creek is smaller. It flows behind Branch Drive and up kind of toward the Huron Meadows Metro Park. But South Ore Creek actually has a fairly large watershed. It's 36 square miles, and it extends all the way up to M59. So all of the water that falls in anywhere, any rain that falls into M59, literally flows out directly into Ore Lake.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think most people wouldn't make that connection in their mind. Geographically, they wouldn't make that connection.
Right. Yeah, most people, when I say that too, they're actually quite surprised.
Right.
And it does kind of give perspective as to why there's often so much flooding, because we are literally the outflow for all of everyone else's water.
Right. Right. Yes. You're welcome.
So, for it seems like when you're looking at this big of a study, $150,000 is not that much. As far as it seems like it would cost a lot more.
Or is it? I mean, $150,000, and this is all going to be covered by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Yep.
To cover this. I mean, do you think that that's an adequate amount?
I mean, I think I'm excited to have any amount at this point. But I think it's a reasonable amount. I mean, certainly we could always all hope for more. This study is a modeling study, so any flood inundation is just really taking in various data points, survey data points. They're using data that we've already gathered and are continuing to gather, which I can talk about. And then basically putting it all together to develop models to see where exactly there's more flooding or less flooding in this particular region that they're looking at, primarily about half the section of South Lower Creek and then all of Dubrova Creek. And then also what they're going to do when we think about like outputs or outcomes from this study, they're going to be identifying different potential mitigation efforts that can happen somewhere along South Lower Creek or Dubrova Creek, or even potentially at the output of Little Ore Lake into the Huron River. So, for example, potential outcomes, and that's some of the things that we talked about on Monday that we're considering that may potentially come out as a response to this innovation study, is potential wetland restoration in the Brighton Recreation Area, which is where South Lower Creek flows through, or also in Dubrova Creek. That would serve as better water retention. Another possibility is like retention ponds or like kind of drainage basin areas in those spaces. Those are Brighton Rec is state land, Dubrova Creek is county land. So that gives us some leeway potentially to pursue things. And so they're modeling. Another possibility that came out more at the outlet from Little Ore Lake into the Huron River is actually to create these are called penstock dams, I believe they're called. And what they do is they actually, basically they're kind of like tunnels in a sense around the culvert there that allow for more water flow when the water's high. Penstock drains, they're called. So it's like extra higher level areas that will allow more water to flow through. So you're kind of doing both. You're doing more water flow downstream and then also some more retention upstream. So kind of multiple efforts.
So all together, these efforts, if you combine them all together, would have an effect downstream, hopefully. That would be that's
the hope. And that's what their modeling's going to tell. Like, none of this is actually doing any of those things. What this is going to do is actually, once they put together the model of the water flow and the flooding, they can then start to look at, okay, if we did this, how much would this help? If we did this, how much would this help? And that will all come out in the report that they'll put together.
When you talk about the outcomes, are you talking about the redirection of the higher water levels?
No, I wouldn't ever say redirection. Redirection typically to someone means like we're going to reform South Lower Creek and send the water somewhere else. We don't want to do that, but we're talking about, for example, like an area where when the water's high, some of that water can flow into that, say, retention pond and kind of stay there and be absorbed there versus flowing to us.
Yeah, I want to ask you, so do you think over the years, I mean, is this sort of trying to counter the effects of development over the years that have occurred where wetlands have been absorbed and some of these more natural water retention things have been eliminated or minimized through the years, and that's why you have this extensive flooding downriver now, and so this is maybe trying to restore some of that more natural balance?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it, yes. Certainly, regardless, it's in response to all of the flooding that keeps happening, right? I would also add, when it comes to the development side, that this is not the only project that we do. So we have a number of projects through our organization, and one of them is actually working with Innovation Academy in Howell, through the Howell schools, and there's students there who actually are looking at using GIS. They're actually looking at development changes in the Brighton area to see, specifically wetlands, to see what that actually means for further flooding. So
yeah, we talked with we talked with one of the teachers there, and they put the robotic units into the water to sort of map out what was underneath there and the flow.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that too. Yep.
Yeah. So very cool. So this $150,000, this project, it got underway Monday, correct?
Correct. Yep. Monday was the kickoff event for it.
And so how will that proceed?
Yeah, what's the duration
of the project?
Yeah.
I mean, if that's anyone's guess. I mean, the hope and the plan right now is that they're going to start work on this, start actually collecting survey data in September, October of this year, and then ideally they'll be able to do the modeling over the winter. And so we're looking to hopefully have a report, fingers crossed, within a year, 2 years.
Okay, so it's a longer term project, and again, as you pointed out, this is really just the preliminary. It's not going to actually do any of these things, but it's going to determine if these things would have an effect and how they would be useful, so that you can then from that you can develop a plan to move forward.
Right. But the nice thing about this, well, there's lots of good things about it, but one of the great things about it is that by having a government-funded flood inundation study, the actual modeling itself to identify specifically what different methods are better than others in different places, we can actually take this and then actually use it to apply for large grants to actually do that work. So this really is setting us up to be able to get the grant funding down the road to actually do this. So,
right. That was kind of my next question was, those next big steps, but this is a big part of getting that done.
Yeah, this is like step one. And then, when you look at the overall time frame of something like this, once the study is done and then you say, okay, we've got this plan we put together due to the study, how long do you think it'd be? Let's just say there's building of dams or whatever the case may be. When do you look at an outcome from this? Are we talking 5-7 years down the road, something like that?
I would say, for example, we get the study results in 2 years. At that point, we'd take about a year to pull together the grant application. Michigan, the great thing about Michigan is there's actually a lot of money. There's millions of dollars through state money out there for grants specifically to be able to do work like this. So there is funding, which is great. So say we take like another year to actually pull together the grant, you hear back, and then so you're looking at probably the actual work, assuming it were to get funded, starting in probably, I would say, about 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time.
Well, I mean,
but you got to, if you get the plan right, then you're good to go.
I mean, and Amber, you're one of these affected residents. You live along the river or creek.
I live on Lake.
Or lake, right? So, I mean, with every year there is flooding that comes through here. So, how has this affected your life? I heard you chuckle there. Just as a homeowner in this area that has to deal with this flooding on a season in, season out basis, how is that? How have you dealt with that as a family?
That's up and down, I would say. I would say on a kind of consistent basis, it's always a stressor. So it's always something in the back of your mind. And I would say it's actually to a point now, I have 2 young kids, that when we start getting a lot of rain, my kids ask me if we're going to be able to stay living at home or if we're going to have to leave.
Right.
So it definitely has impacted us immensely as a family. We've had to leave our house twice now since we moved in the past 7 years because we couldn't use our house because the drains were all shut off because of all the flooding. We've had to get to our house in rain boots. We've had to wear waders. Last fall, after the very high August flood that we had, the water was so high for the next really 2.5 to 3 months that every time I drove to work, I would wear my rain boots to get to my car.
Wow.
Put my rain boots, take them off at work, and then put them back on when I got home.
So has it actually affected your house where you had flooding inside the house, or is it mostly just the yard and surrounding area?
For us, it's the yard and surrounding area because our home is elevated. But there are folks who have had water in their homes and have had to deal with the immense consequences of that with the damage and such. Yeah, especially from the August flood. That one last August. That was the 4th highest flood in history. But as a caveat to that, it was I believe it was 0.008 feet below the 2004 flood, which was, I think, the 2nd or 3rd highest.
Right.
So
I think the highest was back in 1968. I think that was the very highest one.
Yeah,
which
that's correct.
let's keep it in 1968.
Right.
Yeah. And Amber, we should also point out, obviously very knowledgeable, and that's not a coincidence. You're an assistant professor of science education at Oakland University. And so bringing that expertise to bear with the group residents working against Huron River flooding. And you're also a candidate for county commission. Congratulations on your big primary win last night, where you ran uncontested. So hopefully, if you didn't win, that'd be a problem.
That really would.
Yeah. But so obviously very involved in the community down there, and very knowledgeable. And thank you for lending that expertise to us so we can better understand this issue. But very cool. This $150,000 grant. Is it a grant? Is that the right phrase for it?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. It's in-kind funding through the U.S. Army Corps.
Right.
So to give you perspective, the previous flood inundation study that they did, where the report came out in 2019, that one actually was not in-kind funding. So that one, Hamburg Township, wonderfully foot the bill for $40,000. Green Oak foot the bill for $40,000, and Livingston County foot the bill for $20,000. So that one actually was funded by local government here. This one, in comparison, is in-kind funding entirely through the U.S. Army.
Right. Okay. Well, wherever you can find the funding, it's important just to get the work done. So, very good.
Right.
All right. Well, we hope to hear more about this, as it progresses, and hopefully, get a positive outcome out of this.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Amber, thanks for sharing the information and the time this morning. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for considering us.
Yeah, of course.
Stay dry.
Yeah.
All right, Amber Bismack, thanks again. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Have a great day.